Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for having me. I also want to thank Madison Sourdough on straight gluten diet. This is perfect. Just kidding. Very, very pleased to be here today and grateful to have the opportunity. I also want to thank the folks up for the Sons of Wisconsin Early Childhood Association, Greater Dane County, Wisconsin Directors Caucus, CW's Office of Childcare Desert Resources, Satellite Family Childcare, Total Administrative Resources Corporation, and of course the library for hosting us today. And I thought I'd just kind of start and just say, you know, what at DWD and in the administration, what informs our perspective. And so for me, I grew up in Green Bay with a single mom, and she worked for a nonprofit, so she earned pretty modest wages, but back in the late 80s, early 90s, had access to affordable child care, and as a result of that, was able to contribute to her community, was able to be the parent that my sister and I needed, and was also able to contribute to our economy because she was able to work a full-time job and save up the necessary money for a down payment on a house and make mortgage payments, save for retirement. And so, you know, for me at least, it's that perspective, and I'm a former banker, I'm a recovering banker, and so I think in terms of, you know, where are the most effective levers to drive a return on investment, and as we look at this kind of comprehensive picture, and that's something I want to talk about too, is that Governor Evers and this administration, we're taking a really wide look at what are the things we can work with our fellow agencies on, and what can our agency work on to drive returns on investment for all Wisconsinites. And so we look at things like the unemployment rate, but also barriers to employment, like the cost of child care, like transportation, like AODA issues. And so we've been really, I personally, I should say, speak for me, I've been really inspired by the comprehensive view of what we've been looking at, how we've been trying to tackle. And so I'll just briefly kind of touch on the governor's budget and kind of how that affects workforce development. And at no surprise to anyone, our governor very much believes in that what is best for our kids is best for our state. And so just the top three things as a former banker and economic developer that I'm excited about is that the budget repairs our economic infrastructure. And when I talk about that, I mean things like our roads, our broadband infrastructure, and of course our schools. It's pretty apparent to this governor that you know, again, what's good for our kids is good for our state, and that our schools and our early childhood development is the bedrock upon which our greater society, but also our economy and our workforce is built. And he's proposing an unprecedented investment in our education system, including $600 million for special ed. And so he clearly recognizes the importance of a quality education to our economy. And it's funny, my past life, I was just talking about my life as an economic developer in Door County, and all the things we hear about, these impediments to growth, these impediments to entering the workforce. We hear about housing, transportation, but one of the big ones has and always has, or always will be, or not always will be, we're going to fix it, but always has been child care, accessibility and costs. And in parts of rural Wisconsin, we have these vast child care deserts, again, meaning there's a lack of either accessibility or affordability or both. I did see this in Door County, and this is such a, again, looking at that return on investment piece, from a comprehensive view, we want to see those parents able to get to work and provide for their families and consume in our economy. We also want to make sure we're investing in those children, and I'll get to it later, and I'm sure most of you know these stats, but the stats are so compelling as to what, and I understand that, you know, child care and early education are different, but providing both of those things, the return on that is incredible for the student, for the society, for our economy. And we've seen you know, what happens when employees need to take off of work because they have to take care for a kid without quality child care. And Wisconsin does not rank particularly well in terms of the cost of infant care. I think in Wisconsin we're averaging about $1,000 a month, which again, kind of looking at traditional wealth building tactics of investing in a home, investing in your retirement account. It's hard to come up with an extra $1,000 a month if you don't have additional assistance with that. So we see it affecting our employers as well, people missing work, and we've seen, I'll go just through a couple stats, and I know they can be kind of boring, but a survey in 2019 found that a third of highly educated, quote unquote, high potential American women drop out of the workforce every year, and 74% of those say that a lack of decent child care is the primary reason why, which is really concerning. And we look at, you know, how many parents, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation in 2016, 2 million parents of toddlers either had to quit a job, turn down a job, or transfer due to simply child care issues. And so looking at this in total, it's about a $3 billion effect on our economy. And that's why, again, taking the big picture comprehensive view on the return on our investment of our time, energy, and money, this is so vitally important for those families, for our economy as a whole. And we also show, again, that return on investment, how large and long-standing the benefits are when we invest in children early, early and often. And I won't get into too many details, but I'm sure anyone here familiar with the Perry preschool study? So yeah, I won't dive into it too deeply, but this is the longest running study in U.S. history since 1962, looking at what quality early education does for those children. And by the age of 40, we see fewer teenage pregnancies, more of them graduating from high school, more of them with higher earnings, fewer crimes, and more of them own their own home and their car. So really, really compelling data as far as the investment on those children, on those students. And again, this is kind of my finance nerd coming out, but using a 3% discount rate over time, which kind of adjusts for inflation, we see for every dollar that's invested in early education, $12.90 return to the public and about $4 return to those participants. So a huge overall return on investment as we look for those most effective levers. And where can we put our shoulder to the wheel and have the biggest impact? The answer resoundingly is with our early education and our child care system. So the takeaways for that are just, again, that I'm very, very grateful and inspired to work for a prior educator who understands the importance and the incredible return on investment we get in our children in our schools, and that this opens doors for people and for families. It's funny that the governor uses a kind of a common phrase, that the theme among the cabinet members that we're supposed to connect the dots, and there's no, I think, greater illustration of connecting the dots than looking at things like education tied to our workforce, tied to our economy, tied to our transportation system, tied to broadband. All of these things come together, but in terms of where we can have the biggest effect, we very, very much see that in early childhood education and in child care from so many different areas. So know that we're really excited. This is me uncaffeinated, I haven't had caffeine in a month, so we're coming in hot, we're excited, we're energized, we're carb loaded. And so just know that this administration is really excited to tackle these big picture issues and really, really dig in and see some positive impacts. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It means a lot that you asked us to come, and I think it says a lot about the governor and his priorities and what this administration wants to accomplish by making sure that we stay in close touch with these groups today. So thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. I don't know if we have questions later or not.
So we have time for probably one question.
Make it a really good one. Okay. Yeah.
You made the statement that child care and early education is different. How do you see a difference between what we do in child care and early education?
Well, it's funny, I was at a meeting somewhere recently, and someone got really, really upset when they conflated the two. Maybe as far as like training, the specific discussion on that was training requirements. We were looking at the specific discussion was filling out youth apprenticeship career clusters. And so there was a child care cluster and an education cluster, and there were folks that had very differing opinions on the training requirements, those kind of things. So that's kind of where I think the sentiment came from, that they're different in that the training requirements for someone on a K-12 path as a career is perhaps different than what a child care provider would have as far as a career path in terms of training.
I don't agree with you on that.
Okay.
I do think if you look at the Youngstar, their requirements, you're going to see that our career path and our training is in education. It is the same as what the DPI teachers have. I have several degree teachers who could be DPI teachers working my programs.
Well, that's excellent.
So it's really not a difference. Early care is early education.
That's great. Awesome. Any other?
Great. Any other? One more? No? All right, fabulous.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
It is an honor to be here. I see so many familiar faces, and I am so excited to be talking at this event, Wisconsin Strong, talking to our business community, our early care and education community. This is such an opportunity. And I want to share with you, and Secretary Frostman alluded to this as well, that there is this winning combination, and he alluded to this. This winning combination that we're going to talk about is having accessible, affordable, high-quality early care and education experiences for Wisconsin's young children. It's key. And you'll hear it throughout as I go on. So as a birth to 3 therapist in the Bronx, as a director of an early care and education program for children who were terminally ill, who had significant cognitive disabilities, and spoke languages other than English, it was mentioned by Paula, as an executive director of a child care agency in Madison, and as a consultant, an early childhood special education consultant at the Department of Public Instruction. Most recently, I was a Badger, UW-Madison, and working as a leader for the actually the world's largest education consortium focusing on English language learners. I can tell you that this issue of accessibility, affordability, and high quality early care and education and child care experiences are key. It is key. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this. Thankfully, Secretary Frostman talked a little bit about the research behind why high quality childhood experiences are important. They are, we all agree, I'm certain of it. Tons of a plethora of research that shows. But I do want to talk just a tiny bit about this issue of accessibility and then about affordability. And this is a nationwide issue. Accessibility. 62% of parents in our country say that they have had a difficult time finding high quality, affordable childcare. It's an issue. I was on Facebook last night, yes, I was doing that last night, and I was scrolling down and I saw a post, and the post was from a mother, and she said, I am on a waiting list for 13 different either family or center-based childcare, group childcare. And she said, I don't know if I can go back to work. I am putting a plea out there to Facebook, like somebody help me find childcare. I cannot go back to work. And it made me think, aha, we are talking today about this very issue. It's a problem. It's a real problem. The second issue, affordability. So this is according to a report that was done by Parents and the High Cost of Childcare in 2017. The average cost of full-time center-based childcare is approximately $9,500 annually, and that takes into account our infants and our older children as well. That's a lot. I mean, think about in-state tuition. That is, I mean, it exceeds that. I should say too that this is twice the amount that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that they fare is actually affordable. It's 2 times the amount. That's a lot. There are also specific themes, workforce themes, related to this lack of childcare. So, according to the Center of American Progress report, nearly half of working parents miss an average of 4.5 days for every 6 months that they work. So this costs U.S. businesses $4.4 billion in lost productivity, and it costs the parents $28.9 billion in lost wages. That's a lot. As Secretary Frostman mentioned, there is a huge issue with women in the workforce. Roughly a third of highly educated and highly potential women drop out of the workforce every year, and 74% of those women drop out because of their lack of finding high quality child care. It's a very large amount. I think that there is hope and that there is a silver lining. In the U.S. Chamber of Commerce reported that when companies provide child care, employee absences can decrease by 30%, and the turnover can decline by 60%. Big numbers. So again, the key, providing accessible, affordable, high quality child care. So now I want to focus very briefly on what's happening in Wisconsin. What are those good things that are happening? Because there are amazing things that are happening in Wisconsin. We know that. From a systems perspective, we are an extremely collaborative state. We are intentionally and systematically including key players in those conversations here. Everyone from birth to 3, Head Start, childcare, home visitation, institutes of higher education, our school districts, etc. They are in these conversations, and they are playing a very key role. Number 2, we are also focusing on social emotional development through our statewide implementation of Wisconsin's pyramid model for social emotional learning. Now, it's important to know that social emotional development, similar to self-regulation, is one of the biggest indicators of future life success. We are focusing on that here in Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a braided funding system that many states are intrigued by, And it's able to essentially grade federal funding from a variety of sources to support things like Wisconsin's pyramid model. So that's the fourth important thing that Wisconsin is doing. We also have public and private partnerships. They exist in Wisconsin. They're here. We may not know all about them, but they do exist. Finally, through WICA, we have our TEACH scholarships to support continuing education for childcare providers, as well as reward stipends to retain high-quality childcare providers in the field. Our quality rating improvement system, Youngstar, provides training and technical assistance micro grants to those childcare providers. And then finally, and most recently, there have been changes to the maximum reimbursement rate for those families who are receiving Wisconsin Shares childcare subsidy. That being said, there are areas for improvement, again related to accessibility, affordability, and high-quality childcare in Wisconsin. So here's the issue, right? The issue is that those are supporting Wisconsin's young children, our future workforce, are making, on an average, between $10 and $13 an hour. Oftentimes we are not attracting or retaining high-quality staff in our childcare programs. Over 50% of Wisconsin's childcare workforce is on public assistance, and their wages are declining. Thus, the turnover in our field is exceeding 35%. Low wages create this stress for our providers, and it's a stress on their economic insecurity, and it really impacts the relationships that they have with their children, which we know is a huge indicator for quality environments in childcare programs. This trend of low wages, etc., is really causing an issue with having high quality, accessible, and affordable programs within Wisconsin. And it's creating what we refer to as a childcare desert. The Center for American Progress has identified a childcare desert as one of two things. One, a zip code with at least 30 children under the age of 5 who do not have access to childcare, or a zip code with 3 times as many children when there are slots for childcare. Now here's some interesting statistics. In Wisconsin, there are 774 zip codes. In April of last year, 293 zip codes, or 38% of these zip codes, were considered childcare deserts. The highest percentage of our childcare deserts were in the western region, often a more rural region, and that was an alarming 51.5%. Now, we fast forward to March of this year. There are 364 zip codes that are considered childcare deserts. That's 47% of our state, okay? I'm sharing this information not to alarm you. It does seem alarming, but there is something that we can do, and it's the now what. Now what are we going to do now that we have this information? As Secretary Frostman said, the Evers administration often says what's best for Wisconsin's children is what's best for Wisconsin. So Governor Evers set forth in his budget the idea of ensuring that all providers will be paid at the 50th percentile of the market rate, those who are on Wisconsin Shares. He is looking at Wisconsin Shares funding, 50th percentile, and looking at other opportunities for childcare. But what can we do? Those of us who are in this room right now, and this is really where I know the conversation has started, but let's continue this conversation. I have a call to action, and that call to action is at both the local level as well as the state level. So first, the local level, and specifically to our child care programs and providers. I encourage you to specifically to connect with those businesses that are in your neighborhoods, in your area, in your community. Connect. Understand what their needs are. They have needs. Perhaps they're out, the businesses are open in different hours of operation. They understand that. Do they need drop-in care? What are their needs, and how can you, child care programs, partner with those businesses? What does that look like? The opportunities are endless. Business community, you also have a role in this as well. So how can you attract and retain employees knowing that childcare is such a large contributing factor? Think about that return on investment. If you could support employee childcare and the various options within the community. So at the local level, please start those conversations now. At the state level, there are many questions for us to consider. We need to understand and look at those examples of public-private partnerships. How are they formed? What are they doing? What's working well? What lessons can we learn from them? What lessons can we learn from that statewide implementation in the various contexts, rural versus urban? It looks different. And how do we create a statewide system? Are there specific policies or incentive programs that we want to consider developing and fostering? How do we do that? What are others doing? And finally, we need to communicate this call to action between our child care providers as well as our business leaders. We have the opportunity now and need to invest in our children, our families, our employees, and our employers. And I truly believe that providing accessible and affordable, high-quality child care is a smart investment for Wisconsin. Thank you.
I come to you today as a mom of a 9 and 5-year-old, both still recipients of child care in this state, but also as an HR manager at TASC in Madison with nearly 1,000 employees, where I lead a team that's responsible for recruiting talent to our organization. And the issue of early care and education can often be a barrier to starting a job with TASC or retaining your job with TASC. And thirdly, as a member of the board of directors for YWCA Madison, where we care deeply about employability skills in our community because we run job training courses. And the issues related to early care and education are very consistently in the forefront. So I realize that's a lot of hats that I come to with you with today, but it's working at TASC that really makes this all possible. TASC's mission is to improve the health, wealth, and well-being of our customers, our employees, and our communities. That's a pretty cool mission for a company to work for. Many companies' mission statements might be posted on conference room walls, or they might be talking points for meetings. Well, that doesn't just happen at TASC. I mean, yes, we've got them posted around and they do lead some talking points. But at TASC, we are very actively encouraged to think about that message about how we care for our community and think beyond the words to how we can personally understand how we can live out that mission, both when we're at work doing our roles, but then where we choose to devote our time and our treasures outside of work. So today's topic is a direct example how both TASC and I strive to improve the wealth and well-being in our communities. That's certainly a mission statement and a challenge that makes me proud to work for them. So the issue of early care and education is something that we care about at TASC. And why is that? Because we're a third-party employee benefits administrator. We make our money doing the administration of flexible spending accounts, right? Our clients, they are employers all over the country, and these employers have chosen to often offer dependent care flexible spending accounts to their employees, and TASC simply does the administration of them. SHRM research tells us, though, that it's a little over 50% of all companies that qualify to offer dependent care to their employees are actually offering it. And the statistics are even lower on the number of employees that choose to participate in these plans. It's just around 30%. These plans enable workers to set aside $5,000 of their own pre-tax dollars every year, regardless of the number of children, to help pay for child care. As a personal recipient of this benefit, I can set aside pre-tax dollars of $5,000 every year to help me pay for this expense for my family. And as a middle-class family, lowering my taxable income every year by $5,000 is a savings that I simply cannot afford to pass up. So today I choose to be involved because the more people that know about this easy and affordable tax savings benefit, that just becomes good for TASC. It supports our mission to improve the wealth and well-being in our community, but that's all a little bit of corporate speak, right? And I don't work in sales for TASC, so it's not at all really my motivating factor for being here and pushing dependent care flexible spending accounts on you. I'm here because, as our mission states, I care about the well-being of our community, and there are a lot of issues to be passionate about in this country and in our communities. But accessibility and affordability and the discrepancies in quality of care for those in different economic classes is very real, and why this room is filled today. In fact, the more I have learned in preparation for being here today, the root of many other social issues that we all care about may stem from the lack of quality care that directly impacts that social and emotional development in those very early days. Quality early care and education programs can provide the development needed in our youngest minds. Our experts here today are going to help us learn a little bit more about that. So finding quality care, that's a heavy burden when you're a young mom, when you're just really trying to survive, right? So I found Small Wonders Learning Center, the early care and education center where my children, Nathan and Allie, attend when Nathan was 1 year old. We found Small Wonders in 2010 at the height of the economic recession. And they had openings for Nathan primarily because others in our community, I think, were forced to unenroll their kids due to economic hardships, right? I had no idea that Miss Nikki, Miss Alicia, Miss Kelly, and Miss Melody were people that I was about to meet over the next few years. These were exceptional early educators. And in my eyes, they had the single most important job in the world. They were now responsible for my children's entire physical and emotional well-being while I went off to this corporate job, right? Staying home with Nathan wasn't an option for me at this point because due to the recession, my husband had lost his sales job and was back to college. So very quickly I realized how serious Miss Alicia, Miss Kelly, Miss Melody were about doing their jobs. And I was introduced to these binders of early educational, physical, and emotional milestones that I frankly didn't even know existed. My husband and I are the lucky ones, and we continue to reap the benefits of Small Wonders, even as my children move into school age, with help of being able to pay for it with my dependent care flexible spending account. But my work in human resources, I know not everyone is as lucky as us to be able to find and afford quality care like that. So my team that I lead at TASC is a very rewarding job. Almost every single day, we get the privilege of offering jobs to people. But I've done this work for over 15 years, and I know that not everyone we offer jobs to has the ability to accept our offer. Particularly in some of our frontline, our very entry-level positions, like roles in our call center, or sometimes our evening processing positions. Because in order to start a job, a lot of other things really must fall into place, like reliable transportation to work, or the ability to find, enroll, and be accepted in a childcare center that's relatively close to home or work in order to start that new job. We know that we're here today to address solutions to the availability of quality childcare in our community. In HR at TASC, I've witnessed jobs decline, but I've also witnessed my HR colleagues stepping up in really huge ways. We've been able to offer accommodated schedules or part-time working and even remote working to cut down on the commute time for our employees so they can get back to work to start their shifts on time. Dan Raschke, TASC's owner and CEO, is even going as far as to seek partnerships for more creative and advanced ways to go at this problem. Thinking outside the box about advancing dependent care spending accounts is a real demonstrated way we care about the well-being of our community and are forwarding new innovative solutions to this crisis. And when I represent and go to YWCA Madison at our board of directors meetings, we focus on the programs for our clients that we serve. One major focus is the building employability skills that make our clients job ready. The success of our clients is reliant on successfully enrolling in these programs, attending them every single day, and graduating from a job readiness training program in order for them to be ready to secure a new job. Yet it's not uncommon to constantly have to solve for the young children that are forced to either tag along into the classroom, sit in the car outside, or wait in the lobby for mom and dad. And it's not a reasonable set of circumstances. So in this group of socially responsible programmatic professionals, they are seeking ways to also solve for this issue. The availability and the hurdles that their clients face sometimes seem insurmountable. Vanessa McDowell, the CEO, who's also supporting a number of solution-minded employees, are also developing partnerships that would make a bilingual job training program to help funnel people into this profession. It's a real possibility because they're also looking at partnering at a location in South Madison that will directly benefit the clients that they serve. So even my work at YWCA Madison allows me to continue to live out TASC's mission of improving the well-being in our community. So solution-oriented conversations in our community is what attracted me, and likely all of you, to the room today. Both TASC and YWCA Madison are both separately advancing ideas to address the early care and education problem in our community. For that, I am proud. Our panel members for today's event each have a unique relationship and perspective to the topic at hand. Each one of us has a commonality to help bring resolve to this issue, which actually unifies us all as one. This type of collaboration speaks to the richness as well as the complexity of the issue, but also our steadfast bias towards action, right? These types of dialogues where we draw intersections between business and parents, government, and child care providers, where we all come together in the interest of addressing issues, is what's going to move this from talk to action. I'm really looking forward to today's session as we dive in to understand how we, all of us, can help to improve the health, wealth, and well-being in our community by engaging in this crucial conversation. After all, it's these young minds that we're going to meet after our session today that are our future workforce, and they are the future of our communities. So together we must address the early care and education concern in Madison and beyond. So thank you. At this point, we're going to move to the panel portion of today's event, and we want to have our esteemed panel introduce themselves. They're going to introduce themselves and their role, and then they'll tell us each, like I did, what inspired each of them to join the conversation today.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, I don't know if you can hear me through the mic, so I'll just speak as loudly as I can. Good morning, my name is Zach Penzorn. I am the Vice President of Human Resources at M3 Insurance. M3 Insurance is a commercial insurance agent. We're based out of Madison. We have 5 offices throughout the state of Wisconsin. We specialize in providing our clients advice on placing insurance products and helping them manage their risk through wellness, health, and safety advice. That's what we do, or who we are, but what we do is we're in the business of people. While we talk about insurance, I believe our role is supporting employees, and that starts with supporting people, and that starts with supporting our employees. As the leader of human resources, my philosophy has always been, if we take care of our employees, they will take care of our clients, and in turn, we will take care of our shareholders. And I feel a lot of people say that, but sometimes actions, different employers don't always speak that. They maybe focus on other items, whether that be clients or shareholders, and employees come second or third in that list. And as I was approached about this conversation, I kind of joked. I said, I don't know if I'm right for the panel, because admittedly, as it relates to this topic, we're new in the journey as it relates to thinking about how this impacts us. I believe I come from a place, a culture, an environment where we care about employees and we put employees first. But as it relates to this topic and how we support our employees, we do not have all of the answers. We very much approach it in a manner where we care. We want to try and figure it out. And that comes through just one-on-one conversation and trying to do the right thing for every individual employee. And sometimes we've been able to figure it out, and sometimes we haven't. But as I spoke a little bit about this, and what kind of prompted me to join the conversation and participate a little bit further, is this topic on the employer side, at least for us at M3, continues to come up more and more frequently. The individuals earlier this morning spoke about the workforce, and in particular, I wrote down the comment about 1/3 of high potential women are leaving the workforce due to childcare. You all know the economy that we're in and the workforce that we're facing. The workforce is shrinking. Employers are having a more difficult time finding good talent, good employees to serve our businesses. And when I hear statistics about the highly qualified people leaving the workforce, that becomes more and more of a challenge. And again, drives our interest in need to support. And where I feel like M3 and others have been able to provide support has been, again, just in the mindset of wanting to help and having an open voice. But this morning it's already come up, the topic of affordability. And I feel the look towards employers to help on the affordability aspect is something that has been gaining more momentum. And I'm excited to learn today. I'm excited to contribute, share our experiences, and participate in the conversation. So I appreciate the invite from WECA and TASC, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate today.
Hello, can you hear me? Does this work? Yep. Okay. My name is Abby Cruz. I'm the founder and executive director of a pretty unique early childhood program here in Madison called the Playing Field. And with an early Head Start grant, we were fortunate enough to be able to dream a little bit. And after being in early childhood for more years than I care to admit right now, I was able to just dream about what would my ideal program look like. And that program included children from very diverse backgrounds. And so to do that, we've had to really look at barriers. What are the barriers that keep low-income kiddos out of high-quality childcare programs? And so we looked at barriers like cost and transportation. We also looked at barriers like kids might come in need of a bath or clean clothes, and we can take care of those things. We looked at barriers like behavior. You may not know that 250 preschoolers are expelled every day in this country, mostly because child care centers are not equipped with staff or facilities to manage some of the big behaviors that they see. So that's what I do when I'm not here. What drew me to come and join this panel was when I hear conversations about more child care spots, and I definitely see that that's a need. My concern is what kind of spots. And I found myself saying at our planning meeting, it's not a coat check. These are real life human beings. And what happens to them in the 10,000 hours that they might spend in an early childhood program matters. If a child is in full-time childcare from birth to age 5, it's 10,000 hours. And during that period of time, the child's mental models for how he sees himself are being established, how he sees relationships, and how he'll manage and attend for the rest of his life, how he'll manage stress. All that's set for a child in their first 3 years. So what happens to these children in their first 3 years is pivotal, and my field is a big part of that. And so when I hear the conversations about more spots, I am thrilled and really happy because my waiting list is filled until September of 2020. I have no openings for anybody until September of 2020. But I also want to say we have to think about what kind of spots these are, and we have to look at spots that are built around the needs of children and not just the convenience of adults. And so that's what inspired me to join this panel. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Davis. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources for the State Bank of Cross Plains. I have been with State Bank of Cross Plains for about 15 years now, and what inspired me to come today is both it affects me on a personal level as well as a professional level. Personally, I'm a mom of 3 kids, 11, 9, and 6. I've been working full-time all my years in the workforce, so 17 years I've been working full-time. So my kids have gone through the early childhood education system. And we've had great, I've been very fortunate, and that's part of it is I've had the pleasure of having great early childhood care providers. But I know others are not as fortunate. I know from my own personal experience as well, my husband is an educator, and so education is important to us. But I also look at it and go, part of us being able to have some affordability with education, with the early childhood education system, is because my kids can stay home in the summer. We don't need to do full care all the time. Now, as they got older, we had to do a little bit more, but we've been fortunate in that way. But in my household, education is number one. Early childhood development is essential. And even when my husband and I were talking about this event today, I said, you know, what we've always been focused on is exactly what Abby said about that behavior and their socialness. When we go to parent-teacher conferences, our first question is, we kind of put aside the educational stuff and we say, but how are they in class? Are they a nice friend in class? How do they handle themselves? That's what's important to us, because we know, he is an educator and me in HR, we know that when they get into that future workforce or as they go through school, that those are important skills to have. The education piece will follow. So that's on a personal level. Professionally, with State Bank of Cross Plains, we're an independent community bank here in Dane County, and we have a number of locations within Dane County, but some in more rural areas. And I know from personal experience with working with our employees that this is an issue. This is something that they have concerns about. We too have worked with employees on, I can't afford the care out there. I can't find it. Accessibility is a major issue, especially in rural communities. And then it comes to the quality as well. What does that quality look like? And so it is something that we as an employer then take to heart. Like Zach said, I won't sit here and pretend I have all the answers or that we're perfect by any means. Our mission is to ensure, a great place to work for employees, that we are there for our customers, and that we support our communities. And so, trying to do all of that, I too, Zach and I go way back and have known each other for years, but we have very similar philosophies on take care of the employees in order for them to take care of the customers, and we can take care of the community. But it takes all of us as part of that. And we, like TASC, like M3, encourage our employees to really become active in the community and to take up issues that mean a lot to them personally. This, for me, is one of those issues. So I'm honored that TASC asked us to be here today, and really, I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Katie, and I'm a parent. I'm a working mom of 2 boys, ages 3 and 5, who are enrolled in the early education program. I'm a former licensed foster home, and both my kids came to me through adoption. I work in social services right now, and my husband and I are both working parents, and we don't have grandparents or families or neighbors to take care of our kids, so we've relied on finding early education and childcare options for our kids. So what inspired me today it's really twofold. First of all, there's a huge need for employment options with employers who are accommodating towards working families. Secondly, and this is huge, is there's a lack of childcare options available, or early education options. I'm getting my lingo mixed up here, but there's not options available that are decent, both in affordability and in quality. You mentioned $1,000 a month. That is insanely cheap to me. I wish for one kid, let alone having 2. And you mentioned a Childcare Desert. If Madison isn't one, I can't imagine what it's like in other communities, because I've struggled so much to find childcare for my kids. There just needs to be an option more than just a warm body who puts, a bottle in the mouth and diapers on my kid. There's needs to be options that provide enrichment and help with their development as they grow.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Abby, we're going to start with you for the first question. Ready?
Am I ready?
Can you describe for us what high-quality early care and education looks like?
Yes, and I'm going to need about 3 hours for that. So I'm gonna do this description in a nutshell. For me, the bottom line is this program good enough for my own child or grandchild? I know how to use all kind of assessment tools when it comes to my field and my profession, but when I walk into a program, if I wouldn't feel good about dropping my own child or grandchild in that program, it's not a high-quality center. And to kind of extend that, when I first got into Madison, I arrived in Madison about 15 years ago. I didn't have a teaching certificate. Took a job in a I'm going to use the D word, a daycare, because there is a difference between, I think that's maybe the word that you got caught up on, is daycare. But the place was dirty. The staff was stressed out. I actually saw them put an 8-month-old baby in timeout because he wanted to be held. That was my first introduction to a child care setting. And I had worked in early childhood most of my career, but that was my first child care experience. And my first gut reaction was, I gotta get out of here. This is too stressful, I can't even take this. But then I went, but what about these kids that are here all day, every day? So that's what really has inspired me to get into the field of early education and stay with it. And I heard several people say, we take care of our staff so they can take care of our clients. I gotta take care of my teachers so they can take care of these children. I need teachers who are the living, breathing curriculum. The establishment of a secure attachment is primary to any learning that's gonna come later. And so the teachers that I have in my building are really what makes my center a high quality center. I want to have limited turnover. I want to make sure that when a child forms an attachment with this teacher, the teacher isn't going to leave 3 weeks later or 3 months later. I want to make sure that those teachers really understand child development so that instead of punishing children for age-typical behaviors, they're able to support children in their growth and development. So I'm going to focus on, there's lots of indicators of high quality, but I would focus, for this conversation, I would really focus on the teachers. And 89% of my budget goes directly to staff salary and benefits. 89%, and that's so I can pay my teachers a somewhat livable wage. I know that the average wage was mentioned. Our teachers make about $37,000 a year, which is far above the average, but it's not enough. And the way I explain it is this: the skill level that these people need is here, and the wage and the respect that they get is here. There's a huge gap between what it really takes to do this job well and what we're able to provide our teachers. And so when I think about high quality, the absolute first thing I think about is qualified staff, low ratios. I don't know if you've really looked at ratios in childcare, but you can have 6 2-year-olds with one caregiver. Jerry Seinfeld has a great quote. He says that being with a 2-year-old, having a 2-year-old is like a blender without a top. So just think about 6 2-year-olds with one caregiver. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, and she's enough just by herself. So some of those things, obviously the space is important, the curriculum's important, but for me what it comes down to are those daily interactions between children and their caregivers, and what we're doing to support those caregivers and encourage people to enter this field, because they're not entering this field. And the ones that are in the field, unfortunately a lot of them are leaving the field because there's more lucrative options for them. And those of us that have been in for a while can say that we've probably all had better opportunities offered to us. So those are my thoughts on high quality childcare. And do my teachers deserve more? Absolutely. They deserve far more than I can give them. But for every bit that I give my teachers, I'm taking it out of the pockets of families. And so that's the quandary that I'm always in as an administrator in an early childhood program. And so that's pretty much my little spiel on that. So if there's anything else, I can answer questions later.
Thank you, Abby. So we've heard from Abby about the definition of quality care. I want to take the next question to Katie. Katie, what challenges did you face in finding the right early care and education center for your children?
Okay. So I know my story is not unique, but when our son first came home to us, we called maybe 50 places at least, just trying to find an opening. We spent hundreds of dollars submitting application fees to get on a waiting list to hopefully get a place that would open. And our range was, within a half hour of our house, we were willing to go. We toured several places and we saw a huge range between quality and cost. And there was a huge lack of quality. And I was not an expert as a new mom about what an early education center should look like, but I knew what it shouldn't look like. And when my son was a month old and I go into this room, and you were mentioning like the ratios, and it was one teacher for 4 infants. And I have one kid, and it's very hard to maintain, making sure he's fed and napped and when he's fussy and holding him, and then let alone engaging with him. And I saw it was an assembly line. It was 4 bouncers, and all the kids were facing, and the 2 teachers were taking care of the other 2. One was dealing with a fussy baby, trying to put him down for a nap. Another one was feeding a bottle. And then when the bottle was done, she put him in the bouncer and then picked up the other baby. And I thought, when are you going to interact? Like, addressing the basic needs, but when do you get to have any interaction with these kids? Another thing when I interviewed with one of the managers of a place, and I said, well, what's your staff turnover? And she kind of went, she said, oh, I don't know those numbers. And that was a red flag, like, okay, well, clearly that's a problem here. I go to Abbey School, my kids do, so that's how I came here today. But when I met with the director there, and I asked the same question, they have a model where the children for the first 2 years have the same teacher, and then the next 3 years they have the same teacher. And my son, who the first day I dropped him off in Miss Sarah's arms, in 2 years from now, she's gonna be the teacher who sends him on his way when he goes to kindergarten. So he's had one teacher who knows the ins and outs of him and our family and our routine, and that was huge. I mean, once I saw that model, I couldn't put him in another place and save $100 a month. So we ultimately decided on going there, and a lot of it had to do with the ratio. Well, I should be honest, the number one reason we picked that place was because it had a spot open.
We were new.
You were brand new, and they had an infant spot. And that was the only place that had an opening. So we didn't have a choice, and we thought, okay, well, they're a little more pricey, so we'll go there, and then when another spot comes open, we'll switch and we'll save a little bit of money. But 9 months later, I think we got a call, and even this past Christmas, we got a call from my son, who's 3 now, who said, oh, we have an opening now for a room. So, don't worry, we're not leaving. But yeah, that was our number one reason we picked there, but the reason we stayed is because of the quality there. And when we first walked into the room, it's a very typical, like, cinder block room, and it's great, but what made it special was the room had pictures of families, of the kids with their families, like family portraits like you would see in our home. They had those pictures on the walls, and they had the kids' pictures, and it was just, like, the vibe was just very welcoming and family. And also when we did our interview, it happened to be one of the mornings you had a family breakfast. Every month, they have where all these parents come and they're sitting down and they have bagels and coffee and everyone's in their classrooms. Which is wonderful, and I know many centers do that, but what was really amazing was it didn't look like the other centers. It wasn't all white middle-class families sitting around talking with each other. It was every walk of life. There was a taxi out front where a parent came in a taxi to bring her kids to school, and it was every possible type of person in the community was sitting around having breakfast together in the classroom. And that was that's why we stayed. So that was what the quality was that we found and love. Then came needing to make it work financially. So we had a place, I didn't have to quit my job, and we needed to make it work. So my son was born the first week in January. So by the middle of March, I used all my vacation, I used all my sick time for the year. So he also had a lot of ear infections. So every time he had a fever, needed to go to the doctor, that was 2 days that I wasn't paid because I had no more sick time and I had no vacation. And my husband would also help, but my paychecks were dwindling simply because I didn't have the time left to do that. Yeah, both my kiddos had some unexpected health issues, and we knew we could not continue to have it. It just was not financially realistic to have me continue to work full-time. Doing the math, I was working less than $1 an hour. By the time we paid tuition and my lowered paychecks, so I did have to give my notice to my job and find part-time work. I love my career. I didn't want to put that on hold, but we just did not see a way that was possible. So I did end up finding another job who's very supportive and has a wonderful office culture to help me with my family. It has an extremely flexible schedule. So when all these unexpected medical things come up, they're extremely accommodating, and I'm able to do that and be there part-time. So yes, that's my story.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for sharing. I'll take the next questions then to Carrie and Zach as the employers on the panel. So if you could tell us, Carrie and Zach, how you have seen these choices play out in your workplace, and then what challenges or whatever your business is doing to help attract or retain talent that have these issues when they pop up in the workplace.
I'll go first, okay. Well, we see this play out year after year, day after day. Because we have a number of employees who are struggling with finding affordable and accessible childcare, quality childcare. So we see it all the time. Thankfully, we've been able to, and I kind of combining this into one, be able to work with a lot of our employees on that. But, when they first, and I'll say a lot of times it's new moms, expected mothers who, sometimes dads too, who come in and say, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. They find out they're expecting, and they start looking and they start saying, I don't know how I'm gonna get this done. I don't know how we're gonna do this. I'm either on wait list or I can't afford this. And so, my response is always, well, let's see what we can do to make it work. And sometimes it's me literally sitting down with an employee and just walking through step by step, what is it that you're, nervous about from a work perspective. Like Zach said, we're working towards it, but we're not a perfect employer by any means, and we know that we've got to continue doing more. But things like we work with scheduling, that's a big one. So how can we make it work with scheduling? We try to help with, what type of benefit programs we have in place. 75% of our employees are on our medical insurance, so they need to work. They, again, being sometimes in rural communities, we've got a lot of self-employment as spouses or farming or others, and so they need to work. So then it's a matter of, well, how can we get those hours in? What does it look like to get those hours in order for you to still maintain benefits and still work? Because we also know that it's not just about finding childcare, but having good medical insurance. So we work with our employees on doing that. But it is challenging. I won't sit here and say we haven't lost employees because of this, because we have. We lost some great employees because they just can't make the numbers work out, or somehow we can't make the schedule work, or we can make the schedule work, but it still doesn't make the numbers work out. So we do see this. We see this in recruitment. Our business is a customer service business, so we have to be available for our customers when they need us too. And so it is a dynamic of we have to have employees available to help our customers because we have to be there for our customers too. So how do we fit those hours, and what do we do in order for those employees who can work when when we need to meet our customer needs as well? And that's a challenge, and it's a challenge in recruitment. And from a retention standpoint, we do what we can, but from a recruitment standpoint, until people know that, it is hard to recruit. It is hard to find people. We know that people want to work. It's just a matter of how can they make it work. And so it's tough. I'll defer to Zach now and then maybe go into other things.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. I would echo a lot of what you said, and as I listened to Katie, talk about some of the challenges she faced. The big one obviously is the financial and how do I make this work? And I think you think about employers, it's kind of like, well, what are you doing? What's your plan? And the plan is different every time. There's no one answer to this. It's sitting down with that individual and figuring out how to make it work. Like you said, whether it's scheduling, whatever it might be. And it's a routine occurrence. It happens all the time. It's happening more and more frequently. I think, the thing that, in terms of what we've tried to do, I think we've tried to set a culture of support in partnership. And you talk about scheduling. There's a young mother that I just worked through an issue with a couple of months ago. I guess it's more than a couple. It was at the beginning of the school year. And her children are a little bit older now, to the point where after school they need a little bit of care between time when they get done with school and when they come home. But they're of the age of like, maybe they can be home by themselves for a half hour or 45 minutes. And the mom's like, gosh, I'm trying to figure this out and work with my husband and family and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, what do you think would be possible? What are you thinking? Like, could I just potentially, go home a little bit earlier, adjust my schedule and things like that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Well, we're supportive of that. But when I say support, it's not only doing things, but it's having the culture that helps that person feel comfortable that that's part of your environment. She's not the individual that has the special deal, and other people in the organization are having to accommodate or looking negatively on this sort of situation. It's again our culture. It goes back to how do we support this in general, not just the employee specifically, but it's just who we are. And I think about some of the other things, Katie, that you brought up, and I think about some of the things we've done. You talked about sick time and things of that nature. Our culture is, again, just trying to think about how we support issues like that. We had a young mother who had unfortunately had some need to have more significant time off to care for a sick child, and we had a number of employees coming to us, can I donate some PTO time to her to allow her time to take off to make sure she's got a continuation, right? Absolutely. And again, it goes back to setting that environment, that culture, that we're supportive of all of our employees in this particular topic that we're talking about today. And it's who we are. It's not, kind of secretive and we'll just kind of work through this and, don't tell anybody about it. It's who we are. So, those are the types of things that, I think we're trying to get creative on as well. I feel like, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, Adrienne, I feel like more and more of the conversation is also coming to the affordability and how, as an employer, can you help with that dynamic as well. We appreciate that you're supporting us and you're being flexible and you're being creative, but ultimately it comes down to the affordability aspect of things too. Can I make it work? And so I feel like we're seeing more and more of that dynamic come up and some of the challenges there. So I don't have all the answers, but we'll speak with you a little bit more about that as we go.
So we've heard sort of similar solutions being put forward. I mentioned a couple, and then Carrie and Zach also have. So Abby and Katie, based on what you've heard about the solutions put forward, what other support might businesses consider in helping new parents or parents and child care programs?
Okay, well, that's tough. What you guys are saying is, I don't think it's necessarily the norm. Office culture plays a big part in being comfortable and being able to leave your kid for the day and know if he gets sick and I need to leave, I'm not going to be like, oh, there she goes. Having a flexible schedule is another big part. My husband, he works, or his supervisor said he could work from home 1 day a week. And that's why it works for our family. I work 1 day a week in the evening, and he comes home and he's at home that day. So between the two of us and our jobs and our supervisors, that's why we can, I think, continue to have a career, is because his supervisor also understands that that's what we need. And his coworkers don't roll their eyes at him. Why is he home today? You know, they understand. And that's a really big one. I'm not sure when it comes to vacation time, I guess don't have a kid in your first 3 months this year, because then you're kind of screwed for the rest of the year. It would have been great if it was December, and then I'd have 2 more weeks come January. I don't know the answer to that, but I do think there needs to be something. If we had donated PTO time, I certainly would have used that on others when I didn't need it, and I know my coworkers probably would have helped me out too. That seems like an awesome idea. I wish that was around when at my last position. Yeah, I would say a flexible schedule and just the accommodation or understanding towards some of the struggles working families have is probably my biggest hurdle that I've come across.
So, I'm gonna start my answer with a story, because I like to tell stories. I was doing a training in Michigan recently, and this woman raised her hand, and she was talking about her culture. She comes from an Arab nation, and she said, after you have a baby in my culture, for 40 days you go back to your mom's house. You don't cook, you don't clean, you don't take care of your older children, you just rest and heal your body and take care of your baby. And after 40 days, they throw a party and they send you back home. And I was like, wow, that's beautiful. And then I really started to think about it. In my culture, what we do is, after 42 days, we say, get back to work, and here's a breast pump and a broom closet ready to pump in. And so I think we really need to look at the expectations that we place on, especially women, but dads too, and thinking about, can we be creative beyond just flexible schedules? Could we do job sharing? Could we, could there be some kind of support for families especially during that critical first year? I think the important thing is to note that there's not a one-size-fits-all, and I like the conversation about flexibility, because what works for one family certainly isn't going to work for another family, and so how do employers fit in that? And then I do know that there's been a push towards corporate-sponsored childcares, and I think that for some places that can be a great benefit, but I think it's also, again, goes back to what kind of spots are those, and what is the goal of the program? Is it really to support the family and the needs of each individual child, or is it a money-making enterprise? Because I've not seen it done well when it becomes the focus on making money. So those are just kind of my thoughts on that.
I'll open this question up, I think, in your panel. In a perfect, I don't like that word, in an ideal world, what are other solutions you could recommend or put forward that might help to address this early care and education crisis? Anyone can start.
Okay, well, in a perfect world, I would say expand education for prior to kindergarten. That would be my dream, is if we treated these kids, I mean, instead of when they're 5, then they get the supports of a school, and it's free. If it's perfect world, that would be what I would wish for.
I couldn't agree more. I really think that we have to, in a perfect world, look at investing right at that infancy stage, investing in how are we treating those children, and when I say treating, I mean as a society. It's not just here's your baby, here's my baby, Abby, here you go. It's really looking at how do we think about those children and that they are our future, and that investing not early in kindergarten, early education, because we know that from there they are getting they're getting the education in behavioral and social that they so need in order to become those young adults in school who do well in school. They become that workforce of the future, and we know that it starts right at the beginning. We need it, and I think having these conversations you know, as much as I like to think I was enlightened to a lot of things because I am a parent of young children, just even having these conversations has even opened up my eyes even more as to how do we, you know, I don't know the answer of how we do that, but I just know that we need to start focusing earlier on than what we do now.
This was probably the hardest question, I think, for me to answer because in a perfect world, every child would have a person who could just fully devote their first 5 years to them. That would be my perfect. I know that's probably not ever a reality. So within that, then I think these discussions about how do we put the needs of children first, while we also consider the economic and career situations that families find themselves in. And I also don't have all the answers. But I do think there could be flexible solutions. Maybe there could be ways to pay for childcare, but maybe there could also be benefits for people who choose to sacrifice their career and devote that time to their child. I think maybe even not feeling like if you take a couple of years off your job that you're not going to be able to enter the workforce again, or that that's going to be seen as a negative could be part of it. But I definitely think more investment in early education programs is needed.
From my perspective, it's, agree with all these new panel's answers. I would add just one little slice from my perspective. On the employer side, Carrie, you mentioned it, that all employees, not all employees, a majority of employees are employed for medical insurance. And I think about some of the challenges that this is bringing to us. It's really causing us to think about our benefits package. For years and years and years and years, we've provided medical insurance, PTO plans, dental, those sorts of retirement plans, those sorts of things. And there's a pot of money there that people are contributing, that employers are contributing. And how can we be more flexible with that pot of money that we're contributing? And some of the things that are happening, TASC, you mentioned, the dependent care accounts. There's some work going on that TASC and others are leading in terms of having some flexibility in utilizing monies that are contributed by the individual themselves to dependent care and having the ability for that money to be matched to one's retirement plan, so they're not having to make a choice. Do I contribute to my retirement plan or do I contribute to my dependent care? Well, now you can contribute to your dependent, hopefully contribute to your dependent care and get an employer match. So having some ability for employers to be more flexible with that money, because today we contribute 401k matches and things like that, but it might be for a younger mother that some of that money, a younger family, might be more opportune to be dedicated to dependent care. But later in their life, it might be more useful for retirement. So I think, in my ideal world, having some more flexibility around how we are able to contribute benefits to employees to help with this issue is a way we can make some progress as well, I think.
Great. Thank you. Did anyone miss any of their key points that they wanted to be sure that they wanted to address today? Because we want to be sure that we leave enough time for the audience for Q&A as well. So at this point, I think we'll open it up to Q&A to the audience for any one of our panel members. We'll start with you.
Okay. So full disclosure, I work for TASC. So this is a.
Can you?
Hi, I work for TASC, and this is a question related to dependent care. I'm not a parent myself, so my question is for Katie. I'm curious if your employer has the dependent care benefit, and you can take up to $5,000 per year. You mentioned earlier that $1,000 a month was laughable for your 2 kids. Does $5,000 make a difference? Is that enough?
We use that actually, so my husband uses the 5,000. It puts a dent in it. It helps a lot. Zach, you mentioned like maybe something with putting a pot instead of towards retirement, towards early childcare. I mean, that's what I'm doing now, is when I had to go down to part-time, I can't contribute to our 401k. So that sounds amazing to me because we're already making that sacrifice. So to be able to do that and have that $5,000, I mean, every little bit helps us to make ends meet. So yeah, I think that should spread beyond, so other people have access to that as well.
Sure, is there
Hi, thank you all for your contributions. I'm curious, so thinking from the systems change perspective, I hear a lot of onus being on the parents to make it work, the individual employers to be really flexible and creative, which I definitely appreciate, but I think ultimately we need to get to that cultural change piece. So I'm curious what your thoughts are around how local and state governments can support by removing barriers or otherwise. Is it other states have moved towards, for example, longer paternal or parental leaves or universal preschool? What do you see there that government can do to play a role?
Is it me? I guess it's me. So my program is funded by a federal grant. That's how we are able to serve the low-income families that we serve. So I definitely see the value of government funding. I don't care which part of the government sends it, I'll take it and I'll spend it well, I promise. So I think that's definitely a piece. I think the flexibility with maternal and paternal leaves could be something that would be great to look at as well. Because bringing a new infant into your family is a huge deal. It's a huge deal, and why not help families get off on the right foot? So I think both of those things are great suggestions. I also think there maybe could be some kind of incentives for people who do make the career sacrifice to not return to the workforce right away. I think all those things could be considered. I also think that $5,000 is a very small amount, and looking at raising that to at least double would be very helpful.
Well, I'm Davey, and I've been involved in childcare for a long time. And I was sitting here listening to all this discussion and thought, what if public schools all of a sudden ran the way childcare is? So parents all have to pay whatever they have to pay what it costs. They could do whatever they want because besides basic requirements, there's no regular income going to them from the state or the city or the town, and good luck. I mean, it would be chaos. And that's basically what childcare is. There's not a financing system that supports what people want to have.
I'm here as a parent right now, and the only reason I'm here is because I am a parent, and this is an issue that means a lot to me. I'm heavily invested in early child care. Literally, I'm getting ready to spend $30,000 a year on child care, and that's with a 2-child discount. But I'm only here because it's impacting me right now. I wouldn't have been here 5 years ago. And realistically, when my kids are out of childcare, I won't be here anymore because I'm worried about PTO or the PTA and school, public schools. And I think a real issue that we have is this is only an issue for people for 4 or 5 years, and then they move on to the next thing. So one question I have is, how do we advocate? How do we get people to care about this when it's not impacting them? I think there are probably a lot of childcare providers here. So you're thinking about this every day, but I think no one's appreciating that this is an issue that's not on people's mind until it is, and then you become a parent and you have, my wife became pregnant and it was like, what the hell do we do? You have to learn everything immediately. It's really, really stressful, and I think that's why there's no progress being made, is because it's an issue and then it's not an issue and then you're on to the next thing. So what the hell do we do about this? How do we get people invested? And additionally, employers, you're looking at this, people that have children are early in their careers and they're largely expendable. I mean, they're entry level to early, mid-level employees, and there are lots of people that aren't having children, and so they've got to leave to take care of kids, bring in the next college graduate. Like, there's no incentive for a lot of employers to make these commitments. So it seems like a real problem, the realities of having children, and I don't know that there's an answer, but I'd love to hear a perspective on that.
So I can talk a little bit from the employer side. We, from the aspect of the expendable, it actually does affect us more, and I wouldn't look at it from expendable because turnover costs us money too. Average turnover will cost a company 1.5 times that person's salary. That's expensive. And when you continually have turnover because of an issue, then you have to look at what's causing that issue and how do we address that? How do we fix that? Again, I won't say we have all the answers, but with unemployment being very low and more people are retiring than are coming into the workforce too, it's a real issue from an employment perspective. We can't find good talent out there. So we have to make sure that we're taking care of the talent that we have. And how do we do that? And what sorts of programs can we put in place? How do we work with them from a culture standpoint to an individual standpoint too? So, employers, working on our culture, Zach talked about it, but you have to have that culture there. So Katie, doesn't feel that, oh, I'm leaving now and have that guilt. It's just built into that culture. But then also understanding that it is such a short period of time before then they can move on, that how do we as employers take care of them during that short period of time? Because we have to recognize too, it is a short period of time. And so then what do we do as they move on for their careers? Because I don't want to keep hiring over and over and over again. It costs us a lot of time and money too, and it affects our customers, in that process as well. So it is something that, from the employer community, we do have to be mindful of, and we do have to pay attention to it.
Can I answer that? I'm going to share from my perspective, which it's interesting to hear the difference. My perspective on this, if we as a society really understood what's happening in the brain in the first few years of life, our infant toddler teachers and our preschool teachers would be the highest paid folks around. And I think that to really understand as a society, we're spending the money already. We're spending it on special education services, we're spending it on mental health costs, we're spending it on incarceration. Why not spend it on babies? So, Abby for president. So,
Is there more you can add to that?
oh, I can go on all day. We call our teachers brain builders. We don't call them teachers, we call them brain builders. Because those daily interactions are literally shaping the architecture of the developing brain. The brain's the only organ that's not fully developed at birth. So you take an infant who's making 1,000 brain connections per minute, and think about what are you exposing them to in the first 1,000 days of life. It's daunting. But if we really understood that as a society, there wouldn't be any question about whether we invested in babies or not. There just wouldn't be.
So one of my sons had a rough history and had a lot of behavioral issues, and he's going to kindergarten this fall, and I can tell you, him going to kindergarten now, that he's been in this program for 3 years, I don't worry about him. I don't worry about him being disruptive with the teachers. I don't worry about him thriving in kindergarten. If he didn't have the quality early education that he has, the brain building, the connections, it would be completely different. I know my son might be considered special needs or need a behavioral plan, or, you know, it was a rough process to get there. But it's amazing, and I've said this to his teachers all the time, like, I'm so excited that he can be there. I mean, the resources a school would need for if he was just to have one of these assembly line centers where he probably have been expelled by now, honestly, because he would be aggressive. But if he didn't devote the time, now my son is a regular 5-year-old little boy. And yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. It makes a difference to invest early on. It's a lifelong change in my family, so.
I had a question, but also just a comment. Anybody watch the movie 9 to 5 with Dolly Parton in it? If you haven't, I think you should, because there are at least 3 solutions that all of you suggested at some point or another in terms of shared workday between 2 people, a daycare in the facility that probably focused on good education for the folks, and then also more flexibility. And that was a movie that was made back in, I don't know, 1985. Maybe not the right way to go about getting those policy changes to happen, but within a month, you know, there was business productivity that was raised, and maybe a mockery made at the end of the movie, but like if those sorts of things were listened to and policies implemented, I can't imagine how different my job when I was an early child care provider and now as a person who's an aunt and also works with kids would be. And I'm not saying that there's not good quality folks out there, but we just don't give the kudos to the people that do this hard work and that do it well either, you know, and that is all of you in this room, I'm sure. So I wondered if you all had ideas or thoughts about how early childhood education as well as like elder care could possibly collaborate and work together, and if there are you know, ways in which that happens. Because I'm just seeing how much things have changed since I was in early childhood education, but also not changed. There's just a lot more education on trauma-informed care for teachers that wasn't around back when I was a teacher. And then as people age, they tend to have those same types of care that young people do. And it's also a very kind of throwaway field or career, right? Like, who wants to work with older people? Maybe I want to work with kids, but you know, I can't because I'm not getting the pay. And I worked in childcare for 6 years. Later on, after moving from the administrative field back to looking for a job, I looked in childcare. And I could have gotten paid more for taking care of animals that were being injected with various drugs than to take care of our children. So, like, you know, I understand that we got to change the policy and, you know, work from within. But are there other ideas, you know, that like are outside the box, and how like maybe early childhood care education and elder care could work together? And anything that is got the word care in it, like child care, health care, should not be about making money. So, you know, I don't know. Just random thoughts, sorry. Thank you all for being here.
Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
So can I just jump in really quickly? So there are a small handful of models where there's sort of elder care and early education being provided in the same space. I know there's a program, I want to say in, where? in Plymouth.
Excellent.
I think there's another one, I believe in Wisconsin Rapids maybe. And I don't know, does anybody in the room have the information on which programs those are? There's not a lot of them. There's a lot of communities that are talking about that because right now, as you know, the whole issue of elder care is a hot button topic because Medicaid reimbursement rates are so low that we've got a lot of nursing homes that are struggling to stay open. So how do you sort of pair where there's similar needs for space and things like that and potential benefits of cost sharing? I don't know if others have anything to add to that.
Hi, I'm with TASC for Young Stars and Clinical Consulting. I think speaking to that, combining children and elderly care, then you might have to sort of discriminate against who can come into that elderly care because we do put a lot of protection for the kids and we screen who's around them and we make sure everyone has thorough background checks. So then you would have to say, well, you five can come in, but you three can't, and it may be from something from 20 years ago, and we'll find in a background check. So I can see where that might be a problem. And I also wanted to speak to the sort of early intervention and care from birth rather than grabbing them once they're in school. And I find value in Young Star in that we do try to help with the quality part of childcare as quickly as we can. I think a big problem with it is it's optional to participate in Young Star. And I know when we come in, a lot of daycares are like, okay, let's get it over with, we'll do the part, give us the grant, go on, we'll see you next year. Or not, you can choose off your services or not. I think it should be mandatory to participate in Young Star if you're not going for accreditation or being monitored in another way. We're not just there to give you the micro grant because you fill out paperwork, but we want to show you where you do have strengths, and we are supposed to point them out for you. We're supposed to be able to see that. But also maybe where you don't see where the problem is at, we can come in during an observation or overhear something in a classroom when we're walking by and help you see like, well, that teacher specifically might need this kind of support, and those children specifically might need that kind of support. And because of that, Young Stars shouldn't, in my opinion, be optional. It should be just like you have to be pre-licensed to get licensed. You shouldn't have to join Young Star if you are doing any kind of care with children outside of school.
Hi, I just have a question about your teachers, Abby. Do you offer full benefit packages that help retain your teachers over time? And the reason I ask is I have several friends who are early childhood teachers or have worked at childcare centers, and they're very qualified and very passionate about what they do, but they're leaving those jobs because they don't have benefits. They have children of their own and they don't have health care. So there's the example of working at Quick Trip for $18 an hour, even though you're very qualified to provide high quality childcare to your community. And do you offer a dependent care package through a flexible spending account for your teachers?
So we don't offer dependable scale, whatever she just said, we don't offer that. We do offer a childcare discount for children under 5 in our program. Our staff get 50%. And so that's one thing that we're able to offer. We do offer full health and dental and vision benefits, but as a small organization, it's very costly for us. We purchase the absolute best package we could get, but we pay 80% of the single person's premium, but we cannot afford to contribute beyond that to a family plan, so we've lost good applicants because the family plan is upwards of $1,500 a month. And so if you're making, $38,000 a year and, $1,500 a month is ridiculous. The other benefit that we have implemented now is we do a retention bonus for our staff. So if they make a year commitment and stay for the full year, they can earn a $1,200 bonus. So that's helped us to kind of stem some of that mid-year turnover so that we can be really mindful about when openings are going to come up and that kind of thing. But we definitely want to improve. We've only been open 3.5 years. It's definitely one of our goals to improve the benefits that we're able to offer our staff. But for right now, we're offering the absolute best that we can.
And feel like that might be a good opportunity for the state and local government to kind of step up and maybe give some sort of assistance
Yeah.
to providers such as yourself to kind of bridge that gap and help their retention rate and ultimately help our children.
I love that idea. Another thing that you mentioned, we're actually losing, we have a student who's worked for us for the last couple of years part-time and just finished her master's in early education. She's one of our strongest staff people, but we're gonna lose her because she can qualify for student loan forgiveness if she goes to work for the public schools.
There you go.
So there would be another one that would be really helpful. Or we could just take up a collection and pay her student loan.
So I'm going to try and wrap this up for all of us. I'm Ruth Schmidt. I'm the Executive Director at Wisconsin Early Childhood Association. And first I want to start by thanking our panel and Adrienne for facilitating today. It was a rich conversation. You each brought wonderful perspectives to it and said some really important things, I think, for us as we move forth from this space. However, before I sort of close that, I want, Abby, you've shared a lot today that I think for all of us in this room, we can say that's what we need for all our kids, right? That's what every family deserves, that's what every child deserves. And there's other excellent models in Wisconsin also. But you're here today, and what you shared at the very outset of this conversation was that your staff are paid $37,000 a year, right? Did I hear that correctly, right?
Yeah, around that.
And you also talked about you have grants, and you piece things together so that you're able to do that. And I want to get back to a point that Secretary Frostman brought up, and maybe Erin from Department of Children and Families brought up also. The average child care teacher in Wisconsin is making $10 an hour. That's $20,000 a year. That's $17,000 less than what they're making at Abby's program. And it's not with benefits, and often not with paid time off. So we have this vision of what it can look like. And Abby had that vision, and Abby ran after that vision and created it so that she could serve her community and so that she could do something that was transformative for especially low-income children in Madison, correct? And so, Adrienne, you said something in your opening comments. You said a bias for action when you were talking about sort of the culture at TASC and the work that you do at the board on the YWCA. And I think about that bias for action. And when I heard it, I had to think twice about it. I'm like, oh, wow, that's an interesting concept. Typically, you think bias is sort of, I think a bias against something, right? But when you talk about a bias for action, I think, John, you were saying, is it John, is that right? And you were talking about what do we do to keep people engaged in this issue before their parents and after their parent, or not after their parents, but after their children age out of early childhood education, right? What is it that we can do? How can we build on this bias for action when we talk about what we need to do to transform what's happening for kids and for parents and for our communities, right? If you look statistically, and you heard a ton of statistics today, I'm not going to go into more statistics, other than to say, if you look at UNICEF reporting on where the United States stacks up against other wealthy nations, so in a report on 29 of the wealthiest nations in the world, and this may be a little dated, but I don't suspect it's far off from where we are now. Out of 29 of the wealthiest nations, the United States ranks 26th in terms of child well-being, and we rank 22nd in terms of cost and affordability of the care that we have available for our youngest children, right? This is a problem. We heard from the Secretary about the governor's position that what is best for kids is best for our states, or for our state. We heard, Abby, from you, that care is not a coat check. This is not some place where we're looking for, drop your kids off pick up your coat check, come and get them at the end of the day and hope it all went well, right? We are looking for something that's going to be sort of a transformative solution. We talked about, Carrie, you talked about how your focus is on employees and customers and community, which I would argue is the same thing that probably every early education program that's in this room would say is also your goal. It's your teachers, and your customers are your families and your children, and you're trying to meet the needs of your community. And we have a real challenge on our hands. You heard about childcare deserts, right? We heard about all these things. But what I would challenge us with as sort of the takeaway for all of this today is that we cannot not respond to this. And it is not just that parents of young children are paying attention to this. You heard today that businesses are becoming increasingly engaged in this issue. When I travel around the state and I meet with businesses, I meet with chambers, I meet with economic development people, and I hear over and over and over again that we have to figure out how to fix what's going on with childcare. Otherwise, we can't employ people. Businesses talk about losing employees because they don't have access to care in their communities. We hear about businesses closing because they can't hire third shift workers because there's no care for them in their communities. And this is happening all over the place. This is not just an issue that's affecting young working families. And there is a role for government in this. And I think there are creative solutions that are happening community by community by community across our state. Madison, Coral's here from the city of Madison, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but Madison does really creative things in terms of a local government that is investing in a system of early care and education for its young children, right? And I don't think we can let government off the hook in this. So the one thing I would say to you today, I think there's probably a lot of people here who have parts of solutions for this. We are in the beginning of the state budget negotiations. I think probably many of you know that. There was references to where are those investments in terms of what's happening with their young children. I would put out there that there's not a lot of state investment in what's happening with our youngest children. That's not unusual to Wisconsin. That's kind of a national thing that happens, right? And we need to find a way to change that trajectory. I would encourage all of you, if you have a moment, to go to wisconsinearlychildhood.org and sign up for our advocacy network called Forward for Kids. You will be receiving from us action alerts. You'll be receiving information on what's in the budget, what are the things that we need you to take action on with members of our Joint Committee on Finance in Wisconsin, what action can you take in reaching out to your legislators. If you're in communities and you're a business, please reach out to the early education programs in your communities. Have those conversations, figure out ways that you can work together. If you have the opportunity to attend one of the joint finance listening sessions that are happening on the budget right now, or the governor is also hosting listening sessions across the state, please attend those. And if you don't have an ask in mind in terms of this is what we need to do, at least raise up that this is a critical issue. Because our legislators need to hear that. They need to be considering the impact this is having on a host of people around the state. So those are just, I think, a couple of things that I would put out there for us to consider doing in this room. Again, I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank TASC for the leadership that they've shown in this work and the partnership that we've got with you. We really value that. And I want to thank all of you for attending today. There's still probably coffee. There might still be some croissants back there. Please feel free to stick around and have conversation. Last thing, if you're an early childhood educator in the room and you have registry paperwork with you to get registry credit, please put your paperwork, there's a box on the registration table, put your paperwork in there so we're sure you get registry credit. Thank you all.